Hey everyone, good morning or good afternoon. Well, it's still morning. Good morning. I was able to sit in on two of the first two sessions, and it's been a great conference so far. Thanks for having me. We're always excited to talk about this topic, which is an area that we've, as a community foundation, have been very involved in since 2019. I'll pull up the slides here and kind of start from the first slide, but I want to start out by giving some context before we get into the details. Community Foundation of Greater Birmingham. We're a place-based foundation. We're one of 10 community foundations in the state. We've been around since 1959, so we've been around for a long time. Serve the Greater Birmingham region, so that's 5 counties of the 7-county metro area of Greater Birmingham, all the counties except Chilton and Bibb County. So we serve rural, urban, and suburban areas. And every community foundation shares a lot of the same basic DNA, place-based foundation, which means we're just connected to a particular place or geography. And, our collection of funds made up largely of funds started by individuals, families, companies, organizations within that particular geography, and serving that local community. So we serve that 5-county area. We do grant making, sort of broad-based grant making around 5 priorities in the region, and but we also have some larger initiatives where beyond funding, we play a leadership role in convening and research and planning and implementing, strategizing, evaluating these broader initiatives. And actually, one of our more recent initiatives is a post-secondary success initiative that we launched with some help from Southern Education Foundation and the ECMC Foundation nationally, but working with 4 other local partners in Alabama Possible is one of those 4. So we're doing some deeper work around post-secondary success and really, I think for us, learning a lot in this area. But another initiative that we've been involved in for quite a bit longer is transportation, or in particular, microtransit, since 2019. And I'll talk about some of the history on that. But we do look for those opportunities where the community foundation can play an additive or catalytic leadership role in partnership with others to move some issue forward or move a solution forward on a community challenge. With that, I'm going to move to the next slide. The next slide after this, I'll sort of step back and talk about some of the local context and statewide context that we're working within, and the particular challenges we face in this state and region. But I want to first just explain what microtransit is. It's not a sort of intuitive term. You're not necessarily going to know exactly what that means. So it is essentially a transportation technology that was pioneered by a company named VIA that is still working in this region. And they have very sophisticated software. They partner with usually local governments, but also other local partners to become part of the public transportation infrastructure. And it's an innovation in the sense that most people think of public transportation as fixed route, as buses or other vehicles that are moving along a fixed route. Microtransit works in a zone model where they serve a particular zone within the city. And there is in this case, a 7-passenger van. Riders request a ride using a smartphone, just like if you've used Uber or Lyft. It looks almost exactly like that, but you can text or also do a phone call to hail a ride. Professionally driven van picks people up within a block of their location. You can watch it approaching just like with Uber. The vehicle does stop to pick up other passengers along the way. So it's very efficient, at figuring out the best route to pick up multiple passengers and get them to their destination. So you would think that model would be slow, but it's actually consistently since 2019 had an average pickup time somewhere in the range of 12 to 13 minutes. And currently the average time to destination is 12.2 minutes. So one of the challenges people always talk about with fixed route buses is they're late or they run on a schedule that I can't get to work or to school or to shopping or wherever I need to go, medical appointments. And microtransit is a solution to that. It's very efficient. You hail a ride, it picks you up quickly, and it drops you off quickly. Via is very good at this. And they've proven over the past 6 years that almost 7 years that that they're very consistent and you'll see the customer satisfaction data bears that out. So the fares are consistent with current fixed route transit fares, and it is public transportation. So in Birmingham, they set the fare at $1.50 a ride, same as taking a bus in Birmingham, most bus lines. And so here, some places microtransit is replacing fixed route. Here, it is a complement to fixed route, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to step back a little bit. I think I'm telling everyone something that you know intuitively or through your experience working with students or working with others in the community. Reliable transportation is really essential to economic opportunity, but it's one of those things, one of those basic needs like housing, like food, that is really essential. And there's not always an easy solution. Owning a vehicle can be very expensive, and relying on traditional public transit can be a little bit of a roll of the dice. So it's the part of the purpose of microtransit is to build in some more of that predictability and reliability along with the affordability of public transit. A Brookings study found that if you have a vehicle in Birmingham, you have access to 100 times more jobs in a 30-minute radius than if you don't have a vehicle. So obviously, if you're employed, you need to be able to get to work. If you don't have a car, that becomes very challenging. The city City of Birmingham reported last year that somewhere between 10 to 15% of residents lack reliable transportation. So pretty significant number of people. Alabama we have the largest and most amended state constitution. And one of those amendments in 1952, which is partially in response to the civil rights movement, was banning using certain state funding for public transportation. So there aren't easy ways for state dollars to go toward public transportation. We used to say we're one of 3 states that doesn't use any state funding for public transportation. Now we are the only state that has no state funding for public transportation. The legislature created a public transportation trust fund, but it has never been funded. So it exists, but there's no funding in it. So probably not surprisingly, the national entity All Transit rated Birmingham quite low on public transit. The fixed route public transit system is improving, and I think so this is not just microtransit's good, fixed route is bad. I think what's been done with fixed route to eliminate low use routes, to build in bus rapid transit that comes on a very regular, reliable basis along a certain spine within the city, has improved fixed route and in a lot of ways made it complement microtransit service. Since this is the College Access Network, College Attainment Network Conference, speak to the experience of students in college and other post-secondary programs.
The national studies show that 51% of college students cited transportation as one of the areas where they were struggling. So helping students reliably get to class from wherever they're living and to other places they need to go is important. I know I don't need to tell you all that.
Back in 2019, the Community Foundation learned about a model called Microtransit that an emerging company named Via was piloting in Arlington, Texas. Arlington was 6 months into their pilot. VIA is actually all over the country and the world now, but they were pretty new at the time. And Arlington, in the summer of 2019, had 6 months of data under their belt. They actually have now gone to having microtransit citywide, and they've eliminated fixed route because they never had a very extensive fixed route system in the first place. But that example, we had a conversation with them, talked to VIA. Some folks at the city of Birmingham had also been looking at this model. And so we came together with Councilor O'Quinn, who was head of the transportation committee, and other leaders at the city, Mayor Woodfin eventually, and developed a plan to pilot what became known as Birmingham On Demand in the city. The Community Foundation, we don't have enough funding as a foundation to sustain programs like this long term, but we're really good at providing some flexible dollars to test something out, to be a catalyst, to help, in this case, cities at no cost see how microtransit works. And if they like it, they can put it in their budget and fund it. That's what happened. So in 2020, despite the pilot overlapping with the beginning of the COVID crisis in March 2020, the results were still promising enough that the city said, we're going to fund this and put it in our budget. And ever since then, they've expanded it multiple times to cover more and more of the city, and in some cases to have more extensive service hours. And you'll see in a moment, the ridership has just continued to grow and grow year over year. Our regional transit authority went through some leadership changes. Initially, this was just the city managing the program, but gradually they got the transit authority involved. And currently the transit authority runs or manages the whole microtransit program, working in conjunction with VIA. So that started to shift over in 2022, really kind of fully shifted over last year. They've added in 2022 an eastern zone that covers a large portion of the eastern part of the city, which has been very successful. You can see in 2023, the transit authority really looked closely at low performing routes and sunsetted those and filled in with microtransit. And so that's kind of what they call their 70-30 strategy, where they plan to have a mix of eventually 70% fixed route and 30% microtransit and other modes. This slide only goes to 2024, but I will say we've been working since then with all these partners to expand the service to other municipalities in the county. So we'd really like to see this become more of a regional service. So I'll talk about that in a minute. This is just showing VIA has grown a lot and is really a leader in on-demand solutions, and kind of this particular model is their niche, and they're very good at it. We have calls every 2 weeks with their VIA representative and kind of work closely with them on the strategy to expand this model. I'd said this before, easy booking. If you've ever done an Uber, it's very much the same. You can see this is just ridership trends. This is really only through the end of 2023, but the trend has continued along this line. You can see we had an early drop during COVID, but actually even during the thick of the COVID crisis, the ridership numbers continued to trend up, and they've just gone up and up over time. This is a little bit outdated, but I just want to give you a sense of where these zones are. And so don't worry about the multiple colors on the left side. That's just getting a little into the weeds, but you can see there's the eastern zone in purple there, what they call the downtown and western zone on the left side of the map. Mountain Brook has actually provided funding to have one vehicle in their city limits, and so they now have microtransit. And the Transit Authority expanded to Fairfield and Midfield last year. That's a little bit of a unknown if that's going to continue just from a funding standpoint, but currently that does exist. So fixed routes, if you see the purple zone and the greenish bluish zones, you can see there's a gap between the two, but bus rapid transit that spine runs right across those two zones. So if you're out in Roebuck, you can take a VIA van into Woodlawn, jump on the bus rapid transit, which runs every 15 minutes for free, and go into that next zone. So it's a little bit inconvenient, but I've used it that way. It's still pretty fast. These are current rider survey results, but I will say we've watched these rider ratings. They're currently 4.9. They've stayed right around there all the way through. Riders love this service. People don't want to see it go. People ride because it's affordable, it's convenient, a lot of other reasons. 84% don't have access to a car. So it's really serving people who have challenges around transportation. 64% report an annual income of 50,000 or less. So it's helping those who have financial need. 57% use the service to get to work or school. We don't have that broken out, but you can see people are using it to get to employment. We know that people are using it, young people, to get to middle and high school, and college students as well. And people have wanted to see the coverage area expand since the beginning. So that's just the percentage who say that's the top way to improve the service. But the real limiting factor is cost, as you'll see in a minute. One thing that I think is really has been great about the Birmingham On Demand service since the beginning, it has had wheelchair accessible vehicles. You can see that this is 2023, but the percentages are still about the same. Only about 6% of riders are wheelchair accessible vehicle riders, but it does meet a really critical need. And met demand just means you hailed a ride and they had a car for you available at the time. So both of those kinds of vehicles are pretty consistent in being available. And the ETA for the wheelchair vehicles a little bit longer, but still quite reasonable. I'm actually going to stop sharing, and Ananda's going to share a brief video from one of the regular users of VIA.
Hi, my name is Jeremy McNair, and I began using VIA in December of 2019 while I was visiting a friend's house. One night when I got ready to leave, she was concerned about me having to go home in the dark by myself. So she allowed me to use her VIA pass, if you will. And she ordered me a ride, and they came and picked me up and dropped me off at my home. And after that, I notified her and let her know how much of a big help it was. And I asked her, well, about the service in depth. And I asked her how far of a distance do they travel, and she informed me. And so I thought it would be a good idea to start using VIA to be able to go back and forth to work every day. For one, it was a safer option for me, knowing that some mornings I have to get up very early to be at work on time. And since I've been using VIA, I have been getting to work most days on time and being picked up on time as well. And I found that to be a very safe option. And I love the fact that 6 out of the 7 days in the week that I'm able to utilize VIA to go anywhere I want to go throughout the city, especially in the downtown area, especially at night. Before VIA, I was at the mercy of my chair, essentially, because and the public transit system. And oftentimes with the public transportation system, I would have to call my ride maybe a week or a few days in advance. And in doing so, there were only maybe a handful of times where I would be able to get to my destination on time. And so prior to using VIA, I would even have to roll to work by myself sometimes. It's a great service. For anybody that's looking for a transportation option that not only is safe and reliable, but also handicap accessible, because before this, we didn't have the option as to being able to put in, transportation to book a ride with an app. I would say VIA is a great, reliable resource. Mm-hmm. It's a game changer.
Yeah, so I wanted to share that just to show, I can talk to you about this and show you data and everything, but really it comes down to how does this service affect people and improve their day-to-day lives. So I thought Jeremy was a great example of someone who really benefited from the Birmingham On Demand service. It's made his commute to work a lot easier. It's enabled him to get around the city. Very reliable, as he said. And that's the kind of response that you hear from a lot of users. I'll go back to the slides here. So here are some quotes from users. So that's just underscoring this idea that it's helping people get to work, different places they need to go, someone with a back condition, someone who's elderly. The drivers don't have to help people, say get groceries from their car, or necessarily come right to their door. It's within one block. But the reality is most of them will do that. And people talk about that. Older users say, oh, they help me bring my groceries up and pick me up right where I was. And so I think there's some flexibility there to really, meet people's needs. So I think, this is just a sampling, but I think they get so many. I've got multiple slides from over these years where you just see these really enthusiastic quotes. So people love the program. So we're up to by the fall of last year, we're up to 4,400 rides a week. Probably when we get the final 2025 data in, I think VIA has it, but we haven't gotten the report yet. I think they'll have reached over 50,000 rides a quarter. That should say they were at 3,200 rides a week at the end of 2024. So just to show you usage is continuing to trend upward. There's a caveat to that, which I'll say in a minute. I told you about the wait times and the ride durations. You can see people are going to the central transit terminals, so connecting to other transit options, going to UAB for medical appointments, employment, class, going to the hospitals again I said UAB hospital for medical appointments, employment, grocery stores, middle and high schools. So, the kinds of uses you might expect, kind of essential places people need to go. For the first time, early this year, the Transit Authority had to reduce one of the zones' size, hours of operation, and distance you could go due to some funding limitations, partly because of federal funding, sort of an abundance of federal funding from a couple of years ago running out. So they have seen some drop in the number of rides in the downtown zone, and it'll be interesting to see how that affects the overall numbers. We're probably going to see a dip a little bit. I think the program got a little bit overextended anyway in its geography, but I'm hoping that Birmingham can keep it still pretty robust. We've been working for the last few years to, as I said, expand to other municipalities. We've been talking with Homewood, which is just over the mountain from here, and they're going to make a final decision in April. And the city of Irondale, which is right next to Birmingham on the east side and has no access to fixed route transit or any other public transit, is interested in piloting. So we'd again potentially provide pilot funding for those programs, and then the city would take it from there. Just the last thing I want to say, a few years back, Mobile reached out to us. The Chamber of Commerce there wanted to explore microtransit. They launched a program a couple of years ago called MOGO, which was specifically to help workers get to specific places of employment. But Mobile has just entered a $12 million contract with VIA to help them optimize their fixed route systems, do some system planning, potentially expand microtransit, and make some of the kinds of improvements that we've seen here in Birmingham. So that's the only other place in the state where we currently have a VIA deployment or a microtransit deployment, but it's all around the country. It's really gaining steam because it works. And the thing that I say is, we have these inherent funding constraints because we don't get state funding for transportation. That also limits how much federal funding we can get in because we lose a chance for for state match on federal dollars. But even within those constraints, you can creatively shift some funds from fixed route and from other sources toward microtransit, and it's a much more effective system. So I think that is everything. I will open it up for any questions you may have, if there are
Uh,
questions.
no, Gus, I've got questions. If no one else
Okay.
does, I've got so many questions, but
Yeah.
I was trying to be patient and let other people speak first, but I will start with, dang it, somebody raised
I'm
their hands.
sorry.
All right, Lauren.
My bad. Yeah, hey, I'm Lauren Lockhart. I work at the David Matthews Center for Civic Life in Montevallo, Alabama.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just kind of curious. I live in Birmingham, so appreciate all the work you do. But is something like this type of model, or have you seen with the system nationwide, it stretching into more rural areas? Is this type of model adaptable for rural areas? And
Yeah.
just thinking about as we travel across the state, is this something, that could spread out further in Alabama?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. In fact, VIA has some great examples of where they've implemented service in more rural areas, smaller cities and towns. Um, there are some challenges just around population density and the cost of the system. And so, but they have helped local governments sort of navigate that. The nice thing about VIA's approach is it's very adaptable. They can do a lot of things. They've helped New York City schools with their routing for their school buses. They have services where they're just providing the software and a local entity is operating. They have cases where they're operating. It's kind of a mix here now. So they have experience implementing this in so many different ways that I would have said maybe a few years ago rural areas would be really challenging, but I think they've been able to make that work, and I think they'd be glad to have a conversation with anyone who is interested.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question as well. Thanks, Gus, for sharing this information, and Nando for allowing us to be a part of this conference on today. Derek Billups, I work with Birmingham City Schools as a board representative, but also with Birmingham Promise. And so one of the areas that we are focused on is increasing the number of students who are part of our internship program. And that number has grown considerably over the past 2 years. One of the issues we continue to see is the issue around transportation for students going to various work sites in and around the Greater Birmingham area.
Yeah.
And in conversations with the microtransit, there was some challenges in regards to picking up students directly from the schools and having students walk down to a certain location on a corner or something like that, which we thought would be kind of concerning as far as safety concerns was as a matter. And so it would be I'll be very keen on understanding and knowing if there's a way to do some type of pilot program that looked at focusing on getting those students to various work sites and then back to schools proper in the Birmingham area.
Yeah. That's a great question, Derek, and good to see you. Yeah, that would be a good question for the Transit Authority and for VIA. Two things they've often said, and this is really not pertinent to what you're saying, but they have said they're a little careful about being a resource for students to get to and from school, like large numbers of students, just because that would overwhelm the system. But I could imagine if you had a limited number of Birmingham Promise students who needed to get to an internship and back, that would be totally workable. Yeah, and the pickup location, I mean, they do say like we have to keep the flexibility to pick you up within a block, but I don't know. I mean, if it was a particular group of students, I would think that there'd be a way to work through that. So I would just, have that conversation with the Transit Authority and hopefully with VIA too. Because it seems like something you could solve, especially if the numbers are not huge. I mean, honestly, the bigger challenge I think right now is one of the changes they implemented in the downtown and western zone, which is the largest zone, is the longest distance you can travel went down from 6 miles to 3.5 miles. So it limits your ability to use microtransit to go point to point. Like if you're past the crossplex and trying to come downtown, you can't take via all the way. Of course, you can take bus rapid transit there. That's not a great example, but so that's become a real challenge, I think, in terms of the user friendliness of the system. That seems like a problem that could be fixed, but I don't know the particulars of the challenges around that.
So, Gus, what I'm hearing is that are there particular point people at the transit authority that Derek should reach out to?
Yeah, I might I know who we work with. I might want to ask the transit authority who they would like to be sort of just a general contact. But I can route that to you to share out with the group.
Cool. Happy to do that. And since I'm talking, I'm going to take advantage. Actually, Derek, you unmuted yourself. Did you want to?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
All right, cool. I'm going to take advantage to ask
Derek,
some
I
of
can
my
definitely
questions.
help connect you to somebody for that in particular.
So, Gus, like, is there any ridership level where this will be self-sustaining, or is this always going to be a service that needs to be invested in?
Yeah, it's always a service that needs to be invested in. I mean, it relies on public dollars. And so there, some cities charge a higher fee and or cost to ride. BJCTA they may have actually I haven't ridden it in about a month, and so they may have actually already bumped the price up a little bit. But that even if it was doubled from where it is now, it would be such a small percentage of the cost to operate. I mean, the good thing is, even with all the changes in federal funding, sort of base federal transportation dollars to entities like transit authorities have been pretty safe so far. And so they have seen some cuts in some of this extra funding that has come along the last several years, but their base funding has continued. They rely on contributions from their member cities. Birmingham's the biggest one of those. So it does have to be in, municipal budgets and transit authority budgets. And some cities really worry about, I'll say, like the discussion we've had with Hoover and Vestavia and Irondale and Mount Brook and Fairfield, Midfield, is that's great if you want to pay for the pilot, but if there's a higher cost to sustain this, we have to really look closely at what we can continue to fund. And so you just have to find that place. There are some efficiencies to be found by, making adjustments in the fixed route system, but a comprehensive microtransit system really will cost cities some more. So there's never a point where it becomes self-sustaining in that sense, but I think it can be a cost-effective system that won't break the municipal bank over time.
Kind of a follow-up on that. Do we have any numbers on? I know that there's another speaker who's talking about bringing educating incarcerated students and then like that transition to workforce. And they had some numbers about like $1 of public funding gets you a return of like $1.7 in tax funding plus other ripple effects. Is there any sort of information we have on like $1 of public money into microtransit or just public transportation in general will have this sort of ripple effect?
Gosh, I'm sure there is. I couldn't point it to you right now, but I will say, I mean, one of our challenges as a region, we've looked at this a lot, is we're not competing well nationally in terms of job growth, salary or wage growth, population growth. We're not even competing very well in the state with the other metros, if y'all are from Birmingham. or the Birmingham Metro. And so, you know, we always think about some of the initiatives we're involved in. A really fundamental thing is how can we spur economic growth in the region? How can we make sure we have a strong, well-trained, prepared workforce that has access to jobs, that will draw employers, that will help grow homegrown employers, homegrown businesses. And I mean, you need all these ingredients to have a robust, economically vibrant, growing region. And so I think, obviously transportation is one of the ingredients there. And if we can help solve for that, we do have one of the weakest public transportation systems in the nation, but improving over the past 5 years. And so if we can even get up into the middle tier, I think we can make some real headway.
All right, last question, and then I'm going to leave it up to everybody else. You mentioned we are the last state that doesn't have any sort of public funding for public transportation or state funding for public transportation, even though we have a fund that has never been funded. What's the sort of is there a political pressure to increase that funding or just get it at all?
There is political pressure. I mean, Alabama Rise has been, and other partners have been advocating for many years to fund that transportation funds, that state transportation fund. It's some years it's made more progress than others in the legislature, but I think the political will has been somewhat limited. I think it is a sort of a cultural difference within the state and within the state government. The orientation of the Alabama Department of Transportation has been very strongly toward roads, bridges, that kind of vehicle infrastructure. I was looking at some data that said we're actually in the top 5 in the state for the quality of our roads. So obviously we've invested a lot in roads, but it's often been to the detriment of things like public transportation or bike pedestrian infrastructure. And that's just been the orientation of ALDOT, of state government. And it's been hard to sort of turn the tide on that. I don't think, especially as efforts like this here and in Mobile gain traction and people see, I think there's often a perception, well, public transportation is broken, only certain people ride the bus, it's limited, buses are empty. If you can show people are riding the bus and public transit, and microtransit, if you can show it's a wide swath of people, people are choosing to use it. That's part of why we want to make this a regional resource. Is if you can show it's a resource for everybody and people value it and voters value it, I think the legislature is going to look at it very differently. So I feel like there is potential over time to have some movement on this, but we're not there yet.
Thank you, Gus.
Well, thank you all.